Rogue planets, cold, dark, and utterly alone, flying to space with no star to call home.
Where do they come from? What threats do they pose? And could they host life?
To put it quite simply, rogue planets are planets that don't orbit any star, unlike Earth, which orbits the Sun and is therefore an orbiting planet. Rogue planets are free-floating planets that exist inside of our galaxy and spend their days drifting aimlessly through interstellar space. So how many of these guys are there? Probably not a lot, right? Wrong. Recent findings suggest that there are billions or maybe even trillions of rogue planets that exist in the Milky Way alone. That's crazy and kind of scary too. Many of these rogue planets are approximately the size of Jupiter. Translation, it's entirely possible that there are trillions of planets free floating through space 11 times larger than Earth, with absolutely no gravitational loyalty and no sense of direction. I mean, this is starting to sound like the plotline of a sci-fi horror series. While it's not very likely that a rogue planet is going to come crashing into Earth anytime soon, it is possible. As for how these panic-inducing planets came to be, well, how about I let James tell you that one?
There are a few theories as to how these planets are formed. One is that they start out like any other planet in a star system. During the early days of a solar system's birth, planets form from dust and gas swirling around a new star. But sometimes gravitational interactions with other planets or stars can fling a planet out of its home system into the dark void of space where it just drifts around aimlessly. A recent study found that the star system's rogue planets are most likely to come from are what are called Tatooine systems. Named after, of course, Luke's home planet on Star Wars. Tatooine systems, or binary star systems, are when the planets in the solar system orbit a pair of stars rather than just one, like in our solar system. Another possible way rogue planets come into being is during the collapse of a gas cloud. Normally, a collapsing gas cloud forms a star at its center with planets forming around it. But if a gas cloud doesn't have enough mass to form a star, it might still form a planet or a failed star called a brown dwarf. These objects can end up drifting through space, not tied to any star. And then, some scientists think rogue planets are just born loners, not having formed out of a star system at all. They could have just formed out of gas and dust in space over time.
Alright, I know I said the likelihood of a rogue planet crashing into Earth in the near future was slim to none, but I didn't say anything about the past. You see, many scientists believe that when our solar system formed, there were a number of planets that became rogue after being flung out of our solar system into the vastness of outer space. But 4.5 billion years ago, one of those planets came back. A young planet about the size of Mars, and this planet collided with Earth at a speed of over 25,000 miles per hour. The impact destroyed the smaller planet and caused the surface of Earth to pretty much liquefy. Debris from the smaller planet blasted into the atmosphere and became caught in the orbit of the now molten Earth. The gravity of Earth then brought the debris of the rogue planet back together in the formation of what we now know as the Moon. Of course, the Earth eventually recovered from the collision. The lava that used to cover Earth's surface is now back in the volcanoes, and the atmosphere is no longer littered with molten rock, but still pretty scary stuff.
But what if Earth was hit with another rogue planet? As Hannah mentioned, the chances are slim, but that doesn't mean impossible. So if a rogue planet did come close to our solar system, it could still cause some serious trouble without even needing to collide with Earth. The gravitational pull of a rogue planet could disrupt the orbits of planets in our solar system, including Earth. This would mean all kinds of chaos. Earth's orbit could change, which would mess with our seasons and climate. In the worst case scenario, it could knock Earth out of the habitable zone where temperatures are just right for life as we know it right now. It's really a very delicate balance that's keeping us alive. The only reason we're here is because everything is just so perfectly aligned for life to thrive on this planet. If that were to be thrown off, we would just cease to exist.
So how are we detecting these rogue planets? Well, it's simple, except it's not because it's super advanced science, but I will explain it to you in the simplest way I know how. Previously, rogue planets were detected through something called microlensing surveys, which allowed scientists to see rogue planets for a brief moment as they passed by by a background star, which provided the rogue planet with enough light to be seen. The only problem with this method is that the observation is brief, incredibly so, and therefore microlensing doesn't allow for any kind of follow-up observations. Recently, however, scientists have come up with a new method of identifying and observing rogue planets, and that is observing the young ones that are only within the first few million years of their formation. As I said, rogue planets are hard to see because, as a general rule, planets that stray from their parent star are not visible due to the simple fact that there isn't anything around those planets to illuminate them. But young planets are incredibly hot, and luckily for astronomers, that heat actually causes them to glow, making them much easier to observe. Good job, science friends.
There's a pretty lively debate among scientists about whether rogue planets should even be called planets. The traditional definition of a planet is something that orbits a star. By this logic, rogue planets, which don't orbit any star, wouldn't qualify as planets at all. Some scientists think they should be classified as a different type of object altogether, maybe as sub-brown dwarfs or even just large asteroids, depending on their size and how they formed. But some astronomers argue that it's the object's characteristics, not its orbit, that define it as a planet. Rogue planets have many of the same features as regular planets. They can have atmospheres, weather systems. Some might have started life orbiting a star before being ejected, which means they were once planets in the traditional sense, so calling them something else doesn't make much sense. It seems we may not have such a clear definition of what a planet really is after all.
In 2021, a group of scientists found a crap ton of rogue planets, or whatever the scientific term for crap ton is, in a nearby star-forming region, also known as a star nursery. It's the largest group of rogue planets discovered to date, and depending on whether or not you're a pessimist, that's kind of scary. Nuria Moret-Roig, an astronomer at the Laboratory of Astrophysics in Bordeaux, France, said in response to the findings, "We did not know how many to expect, and we are excited to have found so many." Unfortunately, the exact number of rogue planets observed, although estimated to be between 70 and 170, remains unknown due to their elusive nature, but nonetheless the finding has taken scientists one step closer to uncovering how these rogue planets, or perhaps not planets, operate.
A recent study by NASA and Japan's Osaka University has found that rogue planets might be far more common than regular ones. Some of them around the same size as Earth too. It's estimated there could be 400 or so Earth-sized rogue planets just in our galaxy. NASA's upcoming Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope, which is planned to launch by May of 2027, could help discover these rogue worlds. David Bennett, a senior research scientist at NASA, said, "We estimate that our galaxy is home to 20 times more rogue planets than stars. Trillions of worlds wandering alone." End quote. So trillions of these rogue planets, and there are only estimated to be a handful of Earth-sized ones? That seems kinda strange. Well, most rogue planets are pretty small, by planet standards anyway. These findings come from a 9-year survey called MOA, Microlensing Observations in Astrophysics, conducted in New Zealand.
So we know what rogue planets are, where they come from, their potential dangers, and how we observe them. But what we don't know is whether or not they can support life. The answer is, surprisingly, maybe. Kind of. In 2018, astronomers discovered evidence of an incredibly large rogue planet with some pretty big auroras, similar to the aurora borealis. That's cool, but kind of besides the point, more of just a bonus fact, because auroras do not a habitable planet make. What scientists are really interested in terms of possible life-supporting conditions, are rogue planet moons, some of which possibly contain water and are, according to scientists, actually pretty good places to be looking for life. In fact, according to Irina K. Romanovskaya, a professor of physics and astronomy, rogue planets and their moons might just be the ideal destinations for aliens colonizing the galaxy. And if you thought we weren't going to mention aliens in this video, you don't know us that well.
Now, if you want to talk about something really dramatic, imagine two rogue planets colliding in the middle of space. This is a pretty rare event, but it's not entirely out of the question. When two rogue planets collide, the result would be a massive explosion, releasing a huge amount of energy. The impact would likely shatter both planets, creating a cloud of debris that could spread out over vast distances. Depending on the size and speed of these colliding planets, the collision could produce some pretty wild effects. For one, the impact could generate enough heat to briefly create a mini star. As the kinetic energy from the collision turns into heat and light, The debris from the collision could eventually form a new planetary system, with the leftover material forming into new planets, moons, or even a small star. So it sounds pretty epic. It would happen so far away that we'd probably never know about it unless we happened to be looking in the right direction at the right time. Even then, it would just look like a brief flash of light or a sudden increase in brightness from a distant point in space. But still, sounds pretty cool, doesn't it?
Well, there you have it, folks.
Rogue planets.
Yeah.
I love that name, Rogue Planets. It sounds very ominous, and then you read about it, and it's cool, but
Not that bad,
it's not too awful.
A lot more than expected.
All right, folks, we'll catch you in the next one.
Cheers, friends.